Hello everyone, and welcome to the ASMR review show. For this video, we're doing another tier list video because these have been quite easy for me to film. They might be difficult to edit, we shall see. And they lead to me only sometimes forgetting to turn on my microphone. Maybe this will be another one, we shall see. But for today's video, we have hot filmmaker David Fincher. Well, hot as in good looks and hot as in people like his movies, you know. Yeah, so he's a pretty big director, been around since the early 90s, and most of his films are pretty good, and we love what he does, and we like his style. I find he's at his best when he's doing, gritty, crime-related movies, and I guess we could blame his use of digital filming for the look of lots of films today. I found this rewatching some of his older films, the way he shoots on digital with this sort of muted color scheme, that's kind of become the standard for almost everything these days. So maybe it wasn't in the best influence, but nobody does it like he does it. And he just had a new film come out on Netflix, The Killer. So we'll be including that in the ranking. Let me just go ahead and add that here. So we'll be adding that to the ranking. Well, first off, it seems the way they've done this list is in chronological order, and that's a bit of a problem because it means the first one we have to talk about is Alien 3. Yeah, so for most people, Alien 3 would be like in a bottom tier of its own. And David Fincher probably doesn't even want to acknowledge it exists. He refuses to talk about it in interviews because of the process of what happened in the filming, right? And the studio interference on that film. And lots of fans of Alien really hate it because it took that setup from Aliens and totally threw it out the window by killing off Newt and Hicks right away before the opening credits were even finished. And some of the visual effects don't hold up that well, and it's very dour and moody, and yeah, so like part of me was wondering, do I even count this film on a list? Like, it says directed by David Fincher, but is it really? Yeah, so for me, Alien 3 is S tier. This is the awkward thing, because maybe for most David Fincher people, it would be at the very bottom, but I love Alien 3, and I always have. Specifically, I like the assembly cut of the film, the extended version that was made for the DVD set and then redone once more for the Blu-ray release. Yeah, I don't think Fincher is going to go back and do a 4K of this one. But yeah, I've always loved Alien 3, and I see why people don't like it, and I get it, but I just don't feel that way. There's a few things we could talk about for that. Perhaps it's because I got into these movies like after the original 4 had been released, and so I just always knew that was the story. Like, I knew the plot of Alien and Aliens before I'd seen them, and I knew, oh, Alien 3 is the one where everyone else dies, and then Ripley dies at the end to stop the Queen inside her. Spoiler alert. And then there was Alien Resurrection, where she gets reborn as a clone. So I just kind of always knew that's how it was, so I guess perhaps if I'd been an audience member in 1992 after, 6 years of waiting for a new movie and all these comic books having come out detailing stories of what would happen, and then for the movie to throw that all away, perhaps I would have had a more visceral reaction. And it's stuff like that why I've avoided certain similar franchises like Terminator, Dark Fate, or The Predator. I hear what these movies are doing and I stay away from them. So maybe I would have felt that way. But I don't feel that way about Alien 3, and I rewatch it a lot, and I still love it. I like the style, the atmosphere, the setting's really great. The claustrophobia is back in that one, which is good. The score is really great. Not all the visual effects are good, that's for sure. But there's a lot of films I really like with some dated special effects. So that's not like always the killer, you know, and at least they were trying something cool with the bad xenomorph. You know, it was like a rod puppet blue screened onto the film. That's cool, you know, it's not actually bad CG in that film. But yeah, for some people, they're not really gonna like it that much. So yeah, for me, Alien 3 is my favorite David Fincher film, pretty much. But it's not really a David Fincher film, because the version I like somebody else put together that wasn't really with him. They were trying to make this assembly cut based on what they thought he would want. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd thing how I feel about this. So we've talked enough about one film on this list too much already. Let's just say I love Alien 3, so for me it's an S tier movie, and for everybody else it's probably F tier. Let's carry on. Next film, I don't think I'll have any controversy. 7, also stylized as 7N. It's got S in the title, so it's also an S tier film. Now we're back to the land of non-controversy. It's a great movie, very intense and dark, was definitely setting the standard for lots of those dark, gritty, detective, murder mystery films. Huge inspiration on Heavy Rain, one of my favorite video games. And, you know, I think this is like, again, also setting the standard for, killings based off of the Bible. No one's ever done that before. Great performances all around. Whoever it is that plays the killer in this movie is quite a creepy guy, so that's good. And yeah, it's really awesome. I love it. And next we have The Game, which I actually have not seen in a very, very long time, so I don't even remember too much about the movie except the ending. But it had some fun twists and turns to it, and I was pretty invested, but I've just not really bothered on rewatching it. But it was still good, and I'm sure if I rewatch it, I'll enjoy it and like it. So we'll go a soft B tier for this one, because there are other Fincher films that I would say I like less than what I remember of this one. So we'll go a safe B tier for The Game. It's a pretty solid thriller, and I think it's underrated. Then next we have Fight Club, you know, the movie written by, is Chuck Palahniuk, I don't know how you say his last name. Is he gay? I mean, if he is or he's not, the film has definitely homoerotic overtones to it, which I think were added as part of the filmmaking. Yeah, about a critique of that whole macho, alpha male, lone wolf sort of persona, which ended up becoming the mantra of these guys. So, yeah, that's ironic, but despite all that, and despite how I hate over-the-top fanboys of this film, I have a poster of it right over there. I like it. Fight Club is also an S-tier movie for me. Even though I'm trying to rank these in terms of how they are for David Fincher films and my feelings toward David Fincher, we already threw that out the window with Alien 3 being S-tier, and even still, there'll be a lot of movies in the S-tier ranking here. Yeah, I mean, it's so fun, it's so quotable, and it's very entertaining, and I love it. It's got one of my favorite plot twists in movie history. Very generic answer, I know. I am Jack's complete lack of surprise. But I really love it a lot. You met me at a very strange time in my life, Martha. Then next we have Panic Room, which I personally did not really dig that much. I just kind of found it very standard, run-of-the-mill thriller with a couple of nice camera work movements with some cool CG bits to it. But ultimately it was not that entertaining for me, and I don't know if I would bother rewatching it. So for me, and for David Fincher, this one is a D tier movie. don't really have too much to say about it, except it was kind of meh. Then on the opposite spectrum of meh, we have Zodiac, which I think is, I guess apart from Alien 3, one of the most underrated David Fincher films, or it's not the right word because underrated implies that people don't like it, but most people who watch this movie like it, and they would agree it's very great. It's just not many people watch it. And it's not an easy sell, hey, do you want to watch a near 3-hour movie where they don't catch the murderer, and all of the murder scenes are like some of the scariest moments in a film that isn't a horror film? No, not an easy sell. But you know what, I watched it recently, and I'm not going to be cynical on it. I do love this movie a lot. It probably is one of my favorites, so we'll give it A tier, not to be too biased on it. I mean, it is one of my favorites, but perhaps it's just a smidge below these three. Oh no, I like it as much as 7. Screw it, it's my ranking. Zodiac's also an S tier movie. I know S tier is not supposed to be like where all of them are, right? And I'm trying to spread this out more, but I love Zodiac so much, and I think about it a lot. And the performances are great, and it's so captivating for being what should be a dry, dull movie. Yeah, this is also to show you why David Fincher is one of my favorite directors. He has so many good movies. Next we have The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I've actually only ever seen once when I saw it in theaters back in, was that 2008 or so? And I did enjoy it, but the fact that I don't really give much attention to this one, that I haven't thought the need to come back and rewatch it, that it does not occupy as much space in my mind as other David Fincher films. For me, this is a C tier one, especially because it feels so out of genre, and not like in a cool way, just kind of in a, oh, that was odd sort of way. Every now and then I feel like we get a Fincher film that's almost like his warm-up for something real big. Then next we have The Social Network. For many people this is like S tier, double S tier, triple S tier, and like greatest movie of all time, of the decade of all time. I'm not so much that in love with this movie. It's pretty good though, so we'll give it an A tier. It's sharp, well written, entertaining, looks very sleek. Probably should have won all the Oscars over The King's Speech. That's what most people talk about. For me, there's a certain other film I have a poster of right over there that I prefer from 2010, and it's called Black Swan. But yeah, this one's really good. I just feel like, this is more the Fincher I like rather than this. So that's all I can say. I might rewatch it eventually. Following that up, barely a year later, we have the American remake of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I do really like. I think some people found it a little meh, but no, I think it's pretty good and well done. I'm not really sure whether I prefer this or the Swedish one. I've only seen the first of the Swedish film adaptations with Noomi Rapace as Lisbeth Salander. I just simply feel when it comes down to it that the two films are quite similar, but this one has David Fincher directing, and it has the Trent Reznor score, which is great, and it has that awesome cover of Immigrant Song, so that automatically gets it a lot of points. So yeah, we will go A tier for that one. Yeah, it's pretty good. After that we have Gone Girl, which is probably one of the Fincher films I was looking forward to the least, that I ended up liking the most. And that's because I didn't know how long this film was going to be. And then it's like halfway through the film, I didn't realize we were only halfway through the film. Like the spoiler alert for the movie, the big twist were that, the twist of the Big Lebowski, essentially. She kidnapped herself. And as the music was playing, I thought that was like the closing montage of the film. Like, I didn't know how long the movie had been at that point. I didn't know how long the movie was. So I thought, oh, okay, well, that was a good movie with some cool bits and twists to it, but ultimately a lesser David Fincher film. And then I realized, oh, we're just getting started with that movie. So yeah, that was really good for it, indeed. So I like this one a lot too. Everything great about it. It's funny how to watch it, absolutely hate Ben Affleck in the first half, and then absolutely hate Amy Dunn in the second half, and then not know who to root for by the end. So yeah, another very good one is Gone Girl. A tier for Gone Girl. And as you can see, yeah, we've got kind of a very high-end distribution of these films. It's almost like I really like this director or something. Then we have Mank, which is a C-tier movie for me. Mank is an interesting but slightly frustrating one, in that, for one, I haven't seen Citizen Kane. I do know most of what happens in it, but I haven't actually sat down and watched the whole thing start to finish. I know that probably makes me a bad cinephile. But the thing with this one is that the non-linearity with the narrative devising to show how Mank is coming up with the ideas for his script for Citizen Kane is admittedly kind of cool. But I also feel conflicted in the way this movie is shot, because on one hand, okay, it's in black and white, and it's very high resolution black and white, and there's cue marks and everything. It looks very retro. That's cool, okay. But it's also shot in 16:9 widescreen, and I can't help but notice, it still looks like a digitally shot film. It looks like they just filmed it, saturation down to 0. That's it. I think if this had actually been shot on black and white film, it would have looked a little better, much like the black and white sequences in Oppenheimer. That looked like well-lit, well-filmed black and white film, not shot on digital, lit like digital, and then converted to black and white. I do that for fun sometimes. I watch movies in black and white. I just convert the file to black and white, and it looks really good sometimes. A couple standouts include Brazil, Alien, and Requiem for a Dream. All look really great like that. Yeah. And then also I just wasn't really too invested in the story or the plot or the characters, It was just kind of like, okay, so this is how he comes up with the idea for the movie, that's cool. But despite the fact that the black and white stuff looks kind of fake, there are a lot of really great shots in the film. It is well shot in terms of the composition of those shots, so I'll give it credit for that. But then also, this idea about the conflict of him fighting with Orson Welles to get screenwriting credit basically shows up for the last 5 minutes of the movie, and then it's just solved like that. So it's not as interesting as the legal battle drama of The Social Network. Yeah, so I might rewatch it. I might give it another chance. And I do like how it's got some of those, the idea of showing things are kind of still the same as it ever was. There's lots of talk about the politics, and that was very relevant in 2020, and it's still relevant now. And yeah, I like how it's not just an open love letter to Hollywood. It is quite a scathing critique, which unfortunately people these days, when they see these types of films, they kind of overlook. They just assume it's a movie about old Hollywood, so it's gotta be, very self-pleasuring to it. Much like people thought Babylon was gonna be this just, Hollywood jerk-off film. but it's not, right? It's actually a critique and an indictment of that and the industry. And I feel Mank is to a certain extent too. But yeah, ultimately I just wasn't totally caught into it. And in terms of David Fincher, these are all much more better films. So yeah, C tier for Mank. And that brings us to his most recently released film, The Killer. Now, there's a very great performance from Michael Fassbender in this, and it's a very entertaining movie. I also like how it was a short, simple 2-hour movie. It seems weird to complain because I did just talk about how I felt movies were not too long and boring, but now everybody's coming out with a 3-hour movie or, 2 hours, 40 minutes minimum, regardless of the film. So it was nice just to have him be like, hey, here's a short little tidbit, 2 hours, nice and simple, self-contained, easily digestible. That's nice. So yeah, that's good. And the story is interesting, and I like the performances, and the score is good. And of course it's well directed. It's a David Fincher film. He always directs well. But I still found this movie kind of average and lacking in some certain elements. It just was like, it was good. So this one is a B tier for me. A good movie, but an average David Fincher movie. And it's got a bit of a sort of comedic element to it, which I think would go over some people's heads. It's kind of a parody of the idea of being so dedicated and into your craft. He spends 20 minutes making a monologue about how he's like a perfect assassin, and these are my rules that I need to follow. Watch carefully for the perfect shot. Doesn't take the perfect shot when he has ample time and screws it up. It's almost kind of a dark comedy in that way. Especially as the voice in his head gets more and more hypocritical. He keeps going on and on about don't get involved and don't do this, don't do that, as he does all of those things he said he wouldn't do. Yeah, so kind of interesting in that way. And a few great scenes, but again, ultimately, am I gonna remember this one and be as into it as I am to all of these ones? Well, no, I don't think so. So, that's my tier list ranking of David Fincher. Again, if you don't want to count Alien 3, you can just put that down below in F tier. But for me, I love it, so it goes up there. And other than that, I would say that's a pretty standard ranking of David Fincher. Everything else, I think, is probably in its right place, where most people would think. So, yeah, that's that. Maybe that Elon Musk biopic by Darren Aronofsky, produced by A24, will be along lines to The Social Network. Everyone kind of cringed when that film was coming out, and now we all talk about how it's the greatest movie ever. So we'll see. And I guess David Fincher's not going to do any more Girl with a Dragon Tattoo movies, because they got someone else to do that other one, and apparently it wasn't that good. Yeah, that's that. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time.